Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the fifth AUSCU conference for this afternoon session. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the fifth AUSCU conference of 2021. Next in the agenda is the second plenary session. I hope that everyone is having a great break just now. Our next session will be second plenary session for the title Education. So education had been a prominent role and factors of a great civilizations, country, and also region. Education is also a powerful transformative force in the lives of ASEAN people. Thus, inclusive and quality education is the key of the sustainable development of the region. Quality education leads to better health outcomes, higher social capital, peaceful and gender equal societies, and decent work opportunities. It prepares ASEAN's human resources to be resilient, competitive, and ready to face an ever-changing future. Aside from being a powerful driver of social and economic development, education has the potential to raise ASEAN awareness and foster a regional identity. Schools are closed, university are postponed. Pandemic had forced our young generation, educators, and also students to start virtual learning via digital platforms. However, not everyone in the world and the region are fortunate to have a stable access of internet, gadgets, and etc. The second plenary session will discuss and deliberate more on the education strategies and approach amidst and post-pandemic. What is the plan for the future generation? How to implement and make everyone accessible to the new technology and education? We will hear more from the great lineup of panelists on their point of view and ideas on their take of education in the ASEAN community. Let us introduce and welcome the panelists. The first panelist would be the Honorable Iswandi Ahmad, member of Brunei Legislative Council from Brunei Darussalam. Our next panelist would be Dr. Ani Febriastati, Associate Director, Executive Education Singapore Futures, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy from the National University of Singapore. And the third panelist would be Ms. Nurul Hadina Haji Alias, Education Officer at the Ministry of Education, founder of My Actions for SDGs from Brunei Darussalam. Plenary session 2 will be moderated by an icon, I would say, in the region from Brunei Darussalam, a passionate individual that empowers the community. He is also a first-year medical student at the University of Glasgow and the founder, Secretary General, and Senior Advisor of the first Pusat Tingkatan 6 Sengkurung Youth Model ASEAN Meeting and former Director for Administration and Co-Director for Research and Education for ASEAN Youth Advocates Network from Brunei Darussalam. Without further ado, I will now hand over the floor to the moderator, Mr. Nukman Salimin. So, Mr. Nukman, the stage is yours.
All right, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And greetings to all aspiring world changers. My name is Nukman, and it is my pleasure and honor to be able to moderate this event today. Before we start off, let's do a quick mood check-in. So drop into the Zoom chat over there in a word or in a phrase. How are you feeling on this fine Tuesday? I'm excited to see the temperature of the room. Some people are excited. Great, glad to hear that, motivated. I love the positivity that's coming. Some people are sleepy. I totally relate to that. Yes. Excited to learn. That's the spirit. Fresh, awesome, inspired. I am loving this, guys. It's looking really positive and optimistic, and it seems like we will be having a great session moving forward. First of all, I would like to acknowledge how beautifully diverse this room is, albeit virtually. And that's not only to our guests present here on Zoom, but also to other platforms like YouTube. Hi, guys. So everyone is joining in from different backgrounds with different identities, but we're all united with one vision, not to mention from the comfort of our own places. Nevertheless, within that lies the beauty of ASEAN, and we shall capitalize that, amalgamate our knowledge and experiences to create a better world for ASEAN and beyond. Today, we shall use that to tackle the issue of education, specifically education strategies and approach amidst and post-pandemic. I would like to kick off the conversation by kindly asking the delegates a simple question. Drop into the chat again in a few words or in a tweet-like phrase. What are the issues surrounding education that has risen due to the global pandemic? In other words, why is education such an issue in today's world? Now, just to get the ball rolling, to quote from UNICEF, more than 1 billion children are at risk of falling behind due to school closures aimed at containing the spread of COVID-19. And that is only the tip of the iceberg. So what are some other issues surrounding education due to the current global pandemic? I'm interested to see what the delegates have in their thoughts. So one person mentioned the inequality in accessing computers. That is correct. The pandemic has amplified that learning inequality. Attention span deficit, that is absolutely correct. School closures, lack of technology tools, access to technology, internet connection, all of these are valid and real issues that we are experiencing in today's world, specifically in the field of education. So it is crystal clear that this calls for a paradigm shift in education, a call for efficacious strategies and approaches in education amidst and post-pandemic. The question is, how? That is where our amazing panel of speakers come in. I can speak on behalf of everyone here that we are blessed to be in the presence of such inspirations and experts in their fields, who in turn will, in their 15-minute presentations, share their experiences and wide knowledge to answer that how question. And to the audience, have that how question as your focus throughout the session. Furthermore, please feel free to drop into the chat any questions you have for our speakers, and we will do our best to have them answered in our Q&A session. Without further ado, let's have our first speaker up to the stage. Our first speaker today is one of the youngest parliamentarians of the Brunei Legislative Council, an enthusiast of youth engagement and socio-economic development. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honorable Iswandi Ahmad. Hi, YB Iswandi.
Hello, Lokman. How are you, sir?
I am doing great, alhamdulillah. How about you?
Doing fine now, doing fine.
That is great to hear. So how's the weather right now in Brunei? How's it looking like?
Oh my, it has been raining for the past 3 to 4 days. So there are cases where places are flooded. But so far, alhamdulillah, there are no major incidents ongoing. So staying safe here and also staying safe while managing the pandemic and also the weather.
Glad to hear that things are being managed really well. So without further ado, I'll hand over the floor to you.
All right, thank you so much. So I have 15 minutes. So let me know when the time starts. I guess it's now. So ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. So the name is Iswandi Ahmad. I'm a member of Brunei Legislative Council, as you were introduced just now, or what you call in some areas in ASEAN, a parliamentarian. Let me begin with this story. So we live in a time of pandemic COVID-19, and we have seen its negative impact to our community, be it in economic, health, social, or even on a personal level. Yet with these challenges also comes opportunities. And today is a day where we listen to our panelists and also from yourself to share your own insights and experiences in overcoming adversity. So let's talk about resilience. And today we'll talk about resilience in the context of education. So resilience is defined as the ability to navigate successfully through and recover from stressful circumstances or crisis situations, and to do so in a way that leads to healthy functioning over time. Resilience is not about being strong. That's the misconception there. So resilience is also not just only about bouncing back, but it's also about experiencing some sort of growth. So remember the keyword resilience equals to growth. Now it is a trying time, and we have seen COVID-19's negative impact to our community, be it economic, health, social, or even on a personal level. Yet with challenges comes opportunities again, and today we will listen to all of you to share your stories, and perhaps maybe if I can invite everyone just to share a challenge and also an opportunity that you have seen. So might as well, everyone put in their chat a story of hope and also a challenge that they've seen that has been overcome by yourself. So might as well, while listening to me, please share your own stories in the chat room, in the chat box now. Again, so resilience comes from being in touch with adversity. It's not about trying to stay positive all the time or from always running away from difficulties in life. With this, it can be said that to be resilient is to grow from the experience to ensure we are ready to face what may come in the future. So let's look back. What sort of challenge in achieving education have we gone through, and how can we grow from it? A good example that I can think of now is where education has gone online via Zoom, Google Classroom, WhatsApp, whatever you are using in your own places. Then we found out, as many has mentioned in the chat box, that internet infrastructure or even devices are lacking. Hence, we accelerated our efforts by organizing donation drives for laptops and tablets for the underprivileged, donating data and accommodating students' needs accordingly. Unfortunately, it takes a pandemic to accelerate our digitalization. But during this trying time, the pandemic has accelerated it. At least we know now we need to prepare for any uncertainties. In the report by the ASEAN Secretariat released this year, that was called Understanding How Young People See ASEAN Awareness, Values, and Identity. It stated that among university students from an age range of 16 to 30 years old, more than 90% agreed that being a member of ASEAN has benefited their country and agreed that the ASEAN diversity is an asset and ASEAN's future is important. This shows that our young people hold ASEAN as an important entity that binds us together as a region. Therefore, this is a call for all policymakers and various stakeholders to ensure that we collectively assess the state of our youth development across the region, the affinity towards ASEAN, and the extent to which ASEAN can promote the welfare of youth in the region, especially in the COVID-19 area and other disruptions, for example, what we call the fourth industrial revolution. So with this technology changes, does this mean humans are not needed? Not really. So according to the World Economic Forum, creativity will become one of the top 3 skills workers will need. With the creation of new products, new technologies, and new ways of working, workers are going to need to become more creative in order to benefit from these changes. Robots may help us to get where we want to be faster, but they can't be as creative as humans yet. Industrialization, automation, and globalization provide us the tools and network to grow, and should be taken as an opportunity to improve our community. Talking about technologies has always been changing, even before the current crisis. The use of artificial intelligence, AI, and automation were disrupting jobs. I think everyone knows the recent announcement by Facebook that announces a metaverse. So that's something exciting to look forward to. In a recent McKinsey global survey, 87% of executives responded that the workforce are experiencing skill gaps, be it currently or in the next few years. Hence, it's important for our education landscape to develop and make changes to ensure our students and the future workforce are resilient and future ready. I remember when I was in primary school, about 7 years old, our most challenging computer education subject was to make PowerPoint. Fast forward now, 7 years old, are coding. And coding during my time when I was in university, that's the only time when we learned about coding, during university. But now, students as young as 7 are learning coding. This year's Brunei's National Youth Day theme was Future Ready Youth. And with the world now is in VUCA, or for those who may not know what VUCA is, VUCA means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It is imperative for us to be ready for the future. I like the quote by the 32nd President of the United States, President Franklin Roosevelt, when he addressed the University of Pennsylvania on September 20th, 1940. He mentioned, "We cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future." Finally, as a summarizing point or a final point, there will always be challenges, be it from political, environment, security, economy, and others. In fact, I was reading the newspaper for the past few days about this Omicron COVID-19 variant. It's not a matter of where will there be another pandemic. It's just a matter of when will the next pandemic comes, and we have to be ready from now. This is also where transparency and honest communication in policy making, be it in social and economic development, education strategies, foreign relations, and politics, need to be practiced across the board. In today's world of social media, news travel faster to one's Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok compared to printed newspaper. Involving all stakeholders, including young people, like what we're doing today, is the way forward for us to work together, as working in silos prove that it cannot work in the long run. Hence, it is important for today's session for us to be, to ask those hard questions. I remember a mentor of mine mentioned, "Iswandi, there is no such thing as a silly question, only silly answers." So when people are questioning on things, that means people are curious, people want to know, people want to solve the problem. But it is up to us to find the solution. It is up to us to provide the answers. And if we don't have the answers, this is where we need to refer to experts. We need to brainstorm for solving the problem. So nowadays, we have problems affecting our education, and hopefully, with all of us coming together, we can find the solution to the challenges in education that we're having. That's all from me for now, and looking forward for everyone's input. Thank you.
Thank you so much, YB Swandi, for that inspiring talk, actually. Even with challenges lies opportunity. That is one quote I liked and I took from your presentation just now. You highlighted how resilience is not just about being strong, but that also equates to growth. And that is indeed the key for the youth to be future ready. And that is what will drive us through the uncertainties in today's age to achieve success and prosperity. Once again, thank you so much, YB Swandi, for that presentation. Now we will move on to our second speaker of the day. Our second speaker is someone who is active in strategic development and corporate governance at the higher education sector. She is an Associate Director of Executive Education Singapore Futures at Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Annie Fabriastati. Hi, Dr. Annie. How are you doing today?
Great, I'm great. I hope you all can hear me perfectly and loud and clear.
Yes, we can hear you crystal clear, Dr. Annie. So I assume you're calling in from Singapore, is that correct?
Yes, I am. And hello, Dina, and nice to meet you too. I think Dina has been trying to kind of, say hi to all of us through the chat.
Yeah, it's nice to see the audience also engaging with us in the Zoom chat today. So it really is making our session really exciting. So without further ado, I'll hand over the floor to Dr. Annie.
Great. Thank you very much for the generous introduction, Rukman, and for being such a wonderful moderator of the session. And thank you very much to the conference organizer for inviting me to be part of this meaningful conference. And I really love the positive vibe that has been sort of going on in the room. If you could give me 1 second to just share my slides. Am I allowed to share slides just to check?
I believe you are able to share your slides. So
Cool.
you can try to click the share content button.
Okay, can you guys see my slides?
Yes, we can see it clearly. Perhaps you want to start presenting it first?
Cool. Okay. Thank you very much again for inviting me to such really meaningful conference, and I'm really glad to see some familiar names. I saw Lala from ASEC. Hello, Lala, if you are calling in and you are in front of your laptop. As everybody is aware, today's conference and session is really about education strategies and approach MS and post-pandemic. And I do have 15 minutes. And I will cover broadly four main areas. So I will do a bit of context setting at the start, just try to relate. I'm sorry, anybody's trying to speak? Okay. Oh, hi, Lala. And by and large, I will cover four main areas. The first one, I will touch briefly on the context setting, try to kind of relate the main theme of the conference vis-a-vis the focus of today's in this session. The second part is, of course, I will slightly deep dive into the education and briefly touch on some of the disruptions, challenges, as well as some of the implications. Before I will actually, earlier YB Iswandi has mentioned briefly on the futures ready and how to kind of prepare the youth the future. So thank God, it's everything is by coincidence that the order of the kind of speaker. So I'm very glad that I can actually follow up and really continue to quickly introduce the whole area of futures thinking to the audience here. And for those who wish to sort of jumpstart into their futures thinking journey, I can probably share a quick tips of 4C strategy. Okay. Just to set the context a bit, try to relate the main overall conference theme into the focus of this session's discussion on education. As everyone is aware that by and large, the whole Asia's population is aging. And as you can see here from the Global Age Index, is that by 2030, some countries will experience for more than 30% of their population is above 60 years old. But of course, if you look at a couple of ASEAN countries, namely Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, Cambodia, and Laos, as you can see from this data, the population is, we still actually do benefit from a relatively young demographic. So what does it mean? It could be, the question is that, would it be a bonus or liability? And the answer really lies on the role of education to make sure that this young demographic can contribute to the economy of the country, to become economically productive labor, and to really to contribute to the overall sort of welfare of the country. Because otherwise, if it is not managed properly, this whole young demographic could also mean a liability. And if human capital is not managed properly, then this could lead to having a rise in youth unemployment, for example. So this is where I think youth engagement and capability development programs like this conference is really crucial to ensure prosperity of ASEAN in the new normal. So moving on to this slightly deep diver into education, I will share a bit of reflection in terms of some of the challenges and disruptions that I have probably observed throughout based on my experience and a few of review of the literature. I suppose, if not all, everybody here sort of experience a pretty much linear education system, be it in Singapore, in Brunei Darussalam, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, and the Philippines. Obviously, there's certain nuances, certain details, certain technicalities that might be different, but by and large, the education system in ASEAN are pretty linear. So everybody sort of undergoes primary school, and then going into secondary school, and then from there graduating from and going to high school, and then continuing on. So from high school, you either go to the employment market or continue to further study to universities. Now, having this linear education system sort of, have shaped our assumption and expectation that life might also be a linear, but the reality is that it's not. And I hope you can also share in chat if you can really relate to this graph on the right, that when you start after school, even after you work really hard, you still feel a lot of insecurity, and you fail a lot of time, and then with the help with many people, you get back on, and then the cycle just repeat, and then it doesn't look as linear as we wish to be. And this is what we experience in life. And although as what you can see here, that people from outside might seem to see it as an overnight success and a linear, but us who experienced it is not that straightforward. The second challenge, based on my observation, is that I grew up in Indonesia. I went through my primary school education up all the way to my high school education in Indonesia. And then I continued my further study in Singapore, and then another further study in Australia. And then I worked in Vietnam also in education line, and then back in Singapore, continue further in education line. I think I've been exposed to a particular education system that emphasize in teaching us what to think. So in that aspect, I'm not sure if you can relate with me, that a lot of my generation, we are forced to memorize a lot of stuff, right? And then a lot of, during the exam, a lot of question on what is the speed of light? What is the speed of sound? What is this? What is that? And the question that we have now is that, is this still fit for purpose? Because even Einstein, and it was long time ago, he once asked by Thomas Edison that, what is the speed of sound? And Einstein answered, I don't know, because I don't want to be burdened with this kind of facts, because what is if you would like to know about facts or learn about facts, all you need is textbook, and you don't need to be a graduate to learn about facts. So this is something that we might want to take into consideration when we reflect about some of the challenges that we face in education. A couple of other challenges and disruption in education. Of course, earlier YB mentioned about 4IR, and then come with that also AI and the gig economy, who has disrupted the whole job landscape. Up to about 30% that job that suddenly appears now, we didn't have that in the past few years. And imagine if this trend continues, some jobs that might actually appear 5 to 10 years from now, you might not even have it now. I mean, I remember when I grew up, when people ask me, what do you want to be when you are sort of, when you grow up? Then the typical answer that at that time was, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be president. Nobody wanted to be a content creator. But if you ask a 5 years old, or even, people, or even some of you in the audience, if, being asked, maybe some of you mentioned that I want to be a content creator. So these are some of the disruptions that is happening in education landscape. And then, of course, COVID-19 descended upon us early last year. And according to World Bank, that as of 28 March alone, last year, the pandemic has caused 1.6 billion children and youth to be out of school in 161 countries. And so this is close to 80% of the world enrolled students. So imagine the catastrophic impact of this pandemic on the school. And I think I'm totally echoing to some of the inputs and comments from the chats earlier, that this has a lot of implications on our education, losses in learning, anxiety among students, increased dropout rates, rise in mental health issues, increase education inequality. I think this is really echoing some of the inputs that you guys mentioned in the chat earlier. And I just want to use this opportunity to really acknowledge that these problems are real. And I can totally feel you guys if you feel anxious about your study, and if you feel anxious whether your education now can equip you with the right skills so that you can find job in 5 years to come. I can totally relate to your feeling now. And I think let's admit and let's empathize each other, and let's say to each other that it's okay not to be okay in the current situation. But I do not want to go deeper into the negative aspect, and I really want to kind of do a bit of reframing here. Given that kind of negative sort of environment, uncertain and volatile sort of landscape, how do we then prepare our youth for the future, amidst and post-pandemic? And this is, I think, a timely introduction to the whole area of futures thinking, and some people might call it foresight. And before I go, deeper into the whole world of futures thinking, I just want to share a few principles of futures thinking itself. Number one, futures is not predictable. So I'm here not to teach you how to predict the future, because if I can predict the future, I wouldn't be here talking to you, of course, right? I would probably predict, and then I'll be, vacationing somewhere in the middle of ocean, if I could predict what the world will be. But certainly this futures thinking is not about prediction. Futures thinking is also not about predetermining how the futures might be. It's really about what you can do at the present moment, which might actually have impact on our future. So in the world of futures thinking, one notion that we always would like to highlight is really the fact that the future is many, not one. So if you have a look at this, we call this thing futures, the futures cone. So on the left is your current present. And then on the right, this is really the projection of the future. So if you project a straight line from the left to right, that is what we call the projected future. Just to give a bit of context, at the end of 2019, I'm sure all of you, those who actually frequently travel overseas, you guys must have kind of, annual sort of travel insurance, right? Which you kind of buy on annual basis, and then you will renew on annual basis. So at the end of 2019, that's when my travel insurance expire. So at this point in time, so imagine at the end of 2019, as usual, you will renew your travel insurance, hoping and projecting that you will still be able to travel as usual in 2020. And then you happily sort of pay your annual travel insurance premium renewal, and then boom, COVID descended upon us, which stopped all of the travel. So this is where, the possibility of futures, that futures is not just one. There might be things that, happen otherwise. That is not what is projected, right? So this is where you see the realm of probable future, possible future, as well as impossible future. And among all of this, between the projected future until the possible future, this is where you decide one that is your preferred future. And what might influence our future? So imagine if you're standing here, so this is the actor, which is you or us. or it could also be an organization. The first environment that you're dealing with is your direct environment. So this could be your school, your family. If you're working, then it will be your workplace, right? So this will be your direct environment. In other words, this is the environment that you have direct control of. So you have control over what the sort of the interaction between you and this direct environment. Now, when we talk about the future and what might influence the future, is we are talking really about the indirect environment, or what we call the contextual environment. So this is an environment beyond us that we do not have control about. So that include things like your country's education system. That will include things like advancement of technology. That include things like COVID, or that include things like economic recession. So these are some of the things that might influence our future. So often we call it the driving forces or the driver of change. So if anybody would like to start on futures thinking journey, what are some of the steps? Typically, any futures thinking exercise will focus on a specific future, or often we call it as focal concern, right? So this focal concern will be a specific sort of topic that you might want to work on. Things like, for example, futures of me in 5 to 10 years time at the personal level. Or if you think at the system level, this could also look something like future of education of ASEAN in 2030. Okay, so typically you do have specific topic as well as a time horizon. And the time horizon can be 5 years, 10 years, as well as 20 years. And then you start gather some future signals, and then you look to kind of then try to scan some of the weak signals from futures that might have already been happening. So, if you talk about AI, it is not suddenly happening. In the past 5 to 10 years, technological, IT related sort of updates and emerging trends, it has already been sort of given out to us. There are some signals from the future. And once we do that, we kind of then trace back in the history, how does this sort of emerging trends have been unfolding around us? And with that, we will then identify some of the change, some of the driver of change, or what we call it the driving force. Now, of course, there are many tools in doing this task. For example, in finding the drivers of change, we can also using the tool of horizon scanning. We can also use the framework of STEEP, for example, and STEEP stands for social, technological, economical, environment, as well as political, and things like that. Once you identify the drivers of change, you will then be able to kind of create future scenarios. And again, there are many tools that you can use to create that specific future scenarios. You can use the shells 2x2 matrix, you can use futures triangle, you can use many other tools. From there, you will then flash your narrative of scenarios, and then you will end up by communicating your scenario, or this is what we call the share the story. Now, why futures thinking is important? To me, I find that futures thinking is really about democratizing tools for hope. Against such negative, sort of volatile and uncertain landscape amidst pandemic, things are pretty foggy to us. Sometimes we feel hopeless. Sometimes we feel, do I really have a future? So if you feel that, please, you might want to try really embark on the journey of futures thinking, because I find that it's really empowering you to be brave enough to imagine the new futures in the world where certainty and anxiety is prevalent. It also encourages youth to proactively write your own future or shape your own futures. And really, the whole futures thinking skill set is really a tool to really bring about concrete action to reflect on where we are, as well as identifying where we could be heading. Now, how to jumpstart? I will probably take about 5 minutes to elaborate this 4C strategy. The first one is really about commitment. Do commit on this goal that you want to embark on. Take a very proactive approach. Take it on your hand, that the ownership that you want to kind of shape your future. So once you commit with this goal, then you identify the gaps. What are the skill sets that you need to build, right? So, you can read books, you can scan some of the free courses. If your university or school does not offer this, do look into some other non-traditional actors in education, right? So there are think tanks, there are academic institutions, like what we do in the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. In 2019, we did Futures of Mars Youth Workshop, where we did a 3-day youth hackathon as part of our school's Festival of Ideas. It was attended by 75 youth from 10 ASEAN countries. At that time, travel was still possible. So at that time, we asked the audience to imagine if we abandon Earth and we start the Mars colonization, how would you like to build our colony in Mars? So that was the focal concern then. So it was very interesting to see how the young participants explored, what government would look like in Mars, what kind of housing you're going to have in Mars, and what kind of education you might, have in Mars. So it is very, very exciting, and it was super insightful sort of exploration, at least to me. And then, of course, this year we did have our Futures Thinking Workshop as part of, again, ASEAN Undergraduate Summit. The only difference is that by this time, COVID has already struck, and then we had to convert this to online. So in this conference, it was attended by about 150 students from 17 partners universities across 10 different countries in Asia. And the theme was really how to be a leader in a complex world. How do you manage the trade-off? How do you manage the dilemma of growth, where you want growth on one hand side, and then you do have to look at manage the trade-off, right? Environmental trade-off, societal trade-off, and many other trade-offs that you have to manage. And lastly, we also had our own Singapore Futures Youth Competition. It was over 5 days here at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. And the theme was really reimagining Singapore 75. So at 2040, Singapore will celebrate its 75th birthday. And the conference was really to ask the audience or the participants to imagine what kind of Singapore they might want in 2040. Just to continue briefly on the 4C strategy, anybody could guess what is the third C from the picture here? So really the third C is about collaboration, and last but not least is, since my time is up, I have to speed up a bit, it's really about consistencies. So do start small, start now. And if you need some book recommendation, I'm not sure if you can see this on my screen. There is this book about how to futures written by Scott Smith and Madeline Ashby. So I shall stop here, and I really apologize for the times that I exceed the time of the 15 minutes, and I shall hand over back to Nukman. Thanks so much.
No worries. Thank you so much as well, Dr. Annie, for that wonderful presentation. You highlighted how there is an assumed relationship, a linear correlation between the education system and life, but how that's not indeed the case. And education today is not just about learning the facts, but it's also about learning how to think. And that's something I really realized while studying medicine now. COVID-19 really exacerbated the education system today with losses in learning, increased dropout rates, and how important it is to adapt a future thinking mindset, how there are various perceptions of future more than what is projected. And one of the ways to do that is indeed by adapting the 4 Cs. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. Annie, for that lecture. So last but not least, we are now moving on to our third speaker of today. She has a passion for lifelong learning and creating that domino effect of positive change to individuals in the community. She is the founder of My Actions for SDGs, an education officer at the Ministry of Education, Brunei, Darussalam, and also someone whom I've had the privilege to collaborate with for my project of the PITAS Youth Model ASEAN meeting. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Dina. Hi, Miss Dina.
Hi. Thank
How are
you.
you doing?
I'm great.
Glad to
We're
hear
back
that.
to school now, but no students yet.
All right, yeah. So I assume the December holidays start to kick in for the students. So hopefully you get to see your your students' faces next year. Let's hope that is indeed the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll hand over the stage to you.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum and hi, esteemed panelists, moderator, and amazing participants. Thank you, Dr. Annie, as well, for the very detailed strategy on futures thinking, and YBS Wendy earlier for your valuable insights on resilience. So hopefully my contribution for today's session can complement and emphasize the points that has been made. So let me just share my screen and then we can go over the slides together. Okay. Then present. Yeah, can everybody see the slides?
Yes, we can see it crystal clear.
Great. So I am truthfully quite humbled right now to talk about education and the youth, which are two very important aspects of my life. And for the longest time, I've always kept my teaching profession as a sociology teacher and my youth work quite separate from each other. And I would teach, therefore, sociology in school. And then after school, I would help sort of empower the youth with leadership skills through some local organizations. And I realized that after doing this, it took a toll on me physically and mentally because I was tired and not completely fulfilled with the work that I was doing inside school and outside the school. So upon some reflection, I had finally realized that the work I was doing to help empower the youths is not inclusive of my own students in my own school. And the things that I have learned in teaching as a sociology teacher have not been applied to my role in the wider community. So that was sort of the problem for me, juggling between teaching and my youth work. And the problem here lies that it's because the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that I have as a sociology teacher were not effectively applied to help empower the youths. So it was very difficult to have all these knowledge and skills, but not be able to sort of help other people with it and apply it to the wider community. So I fully believe that in order for the youth to be empowered as leaders and as partakers in rebuilding our society in the post-COVID-19 era, is that they must be educated with the foundational knowledge, core skills, and also empowered with very important character qualities such as curiosity and adaptability from a very early age. For education and empowerment is always and should be synonymous to each other. As you are aware, we have rapid technological innovation, we have the climate crisis, we have the pandemic, which has contributed to the need to build a future-ready, pandemic-proof education system whose curriculum is fit with the changing needs of the job market, especially in the fourth industrial revolution, where it has a lot of uncertainties. Jobs today may not be even existing in the future, and jobs as well, like there's no such thing as long-term careers anymore. So those all like sort of interact with each other to provide like so those all interact with each other to have all these consequences. So especially now, because we are confronted with this economic wrecking ball with intergenerational consequences that even our children will inherit, such as the climate crisis. So it is therefore important to me, and I believe it's important for the youth as well, to be empowered with the knowledge that we need to start by transforming our classrooms. And it is like, to me, we cannot talk about youth without talking about the place where they spend the majority of their time, which is in classrooms or virtual classrooms in this case. So the core soft skills of the 21st century, including not just creativity and flexibility, but also, as you may know, complex problem solving, critical thinking, and what Dr. Annie was talking about before, collaboration, will be definitely crucial for enabling people to become better able to adapt to the changing needs of the job market. And like I said before, it has to be developed early in basic education, and then later on refined during lifelong learning as an adult. So by providing a strong basis of these soft skills, an educational system can serve as a catalyst not only for an increased adaptability for future jobs, but also for a generally improved quality of life. And in fact, research has found that underpinning these varying 21st century skills that you can find a lot if you Google is actually social and emotional skills. So this is like the most fundamental, the most basic set of skills that you can teach your children and the younger generations to have and refine as they grow up. Early childhood is also a critical period for getting these important skills and developed at later ages. So imagine we have a classroom in which we don't just focus on absorbing the academic material, but we also consider how well students collaborate and communicate with one another. If we were able to teach them those skills at an early age, it will definitely improve over time. So these skills are also important for today's youngest generations, who definitely will have to require a wide-ranging set of emotional and social abilities to prepare them for the rapidly changing workplace. And then they can also it also positions them to achieve better academic outcomes, and not only that, equip them to contribute to society. So we are looking at a lot of benefits that cultivating social and emotional skills at an early age in the education system can integrate with each other to make the future generation a better citizen and be able to contribute to the wider society. And not only that, studies have also shown that students who have better social and emotional skills contributed to better academic performance and improved attitudes and behaviors, and also reduce emotional distress. And we have seen a lot of students who are trying to cope with the pandemic express their views on how online education have been difficult on their mental health. And hopefully with the right cultivation of social and emotional skills, they are able to cope with that better. As a teacher, especially a sociology teacher, I have seen that emphasizing competencies like creativity, communication, and collaboration has helped students and therefore youths succeed beyond their academic journey and into their work experience. In fact, I have also been reunited with some of my previous students through the volunteering community, where they have carried with them the knowledge of the society that we learn through the subject, mixed with critical thinking skills that we talk about in class, and we try to empower them with critical thinking skills. And not only that, to use the knowledge that they have to contribute to society as part of their social responsibility. We therefore need to balance our need for academic excellence with learning strategies that promote positive socialization, empathy, and like YBS Wendy was talking about, resilience. And this could be done through a bottom-up approach. And I recognize that even though the current reality does not really reflect what we desire, the desired reality, research suggests that it's never too late. Social and emotional skills are, in fact, teachable at all ages. I was quite late to my to experience and understand critical thinking as well. I only knew about critical thinking skills in university, but it's something that I try and strive to improve on from then on. As such, the youths also have to refine our social and emotional skills through reskilling, upskilling, and lifelong learning. And it is even projected that children and youths today will work in jobs that do not exist today, making these skills crucial to remain relevant to the ever-changing job market. Even Google employers have recognized the benefits of social and emotional skills in the 21st century workplace. Google found that its most effective managers were good communicators, skilled at listening to and sharing information, then again showing the continuing importance of these skills. The future of education and teaching in the post-pandemic era must include creating a safe environment, developing nurturing relationships and creativity, and coupled with that, the need to adapt to technology as well. So that poses a lot of challenges, but as my fellow panelists have beautifully said, it poses a lot of opportunities as well. And this definitely cannot be done without engaging the youth, whose role is to continue to advocate for quality education and empowerment of younger generations. Where there is an educational and skills gap, it is also our responsibility to fill and complement all the efforts being done by private or public sector. We must teach young generations to be better and support them. As youth leaders, such as yourselves, we must also continue to grow our emotional intelligence and adaptability in uncertainties to become responsible leaders. I think I'm excited as well to hear from the participants on what their insight on education is and the future of education. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to talking to you guys again.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dina, for that amazing presentation. I really liked how you highlighted that to develop the youth, they need to be equipped with knowledge, core skills, and certain qualities of character. And apart from that, social and emotional skills are also paramount to be adapted in our future generation, and how this paradigm shift requires a transformation in our classrooms, be it physical or virtual. So once again, thank you so much, Ms. Dina, for that presentation. With that marks the end of our panels of speakers presentations. So we will now move on to the question and answer session. So if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, and you will then be invited to the microphone to directly ask your question. Another alternative is that you can drop in your question to the chat over there in Zoom, and we will be able to, I will be able to direct the question to the panel of speakers. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. All right, so we have a few questions coming in. Let's have Almas Ryoga from Indonesia. If you'd like to come up to the microphone first and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Almas Ryoga and I come from Indonesia. Thank you for the opportunity. Here I would like to ask Dr. Ani. And my question is pretty simple, but I do really know your perspective, Doctor. So in the middle of your presentation, especially when you explain about the things that might influence the future, you've mentioned about demographics, right? And my question goes to, what is your opinion about bonus demographic related to the education issue and our future as a student? Is that bonus demographic is a good or a bad thing to you? Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. That was a great question, Almas. Well, bonus is always good, isn't it? That was the quick answer, of course. You know, it says yes or no. I mean, that's how you phrase the question. Is bonus good or not? It's always a good thing. And just the long answer of that is that population bonus is a good thing, but if it is managed properly, right? In the sense that if you do have a huge young population, it can only means good if they do have the necessary skills, if they can find employment after their study. Because if you don't manage the human capital development and there's a mismatch in terms of the skills, then where they're going to work after school. And then if that's when you start to trickle down the impact, right? Where youth cannot find employment, and that's where the rising unemployment rates and etc. So employment bonus is a good thing, but it has to be managed properly. Thank you. And I hope that answers your question.
That's good. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much as well for that great question. We'll now move on to another participant. Can we have Thu Trang Le from Vietnam to ask the question?
Hi, my name
Hello.
is Thu Trang Le, but you can call me TT for short and for easy. Okay, I also have a question for Dr. Annie, because I kind of interested in education. You mentioned about how to think and what to think education, and I agree with you that how to think is much more important, is much more vital. But to me, I guess somehow what to think education or like the basic knowledge is also important, because it's like the foundation for your knowledge. However, in the COVID-19, due to the limit delivery, I guess we like more how to think education, because we have to first make sure that people know the basic information like that. So I wonder if there any solution to improve the education of how to think, like how to increase the education like that.
Thank you very much. It's a really great question. Yes, yes, it's crystal clear, and that's what is a great question. I may not have the answer, and I really invite my two fellow panelists to jump in and help me. Just my attempt to answer that question. Definitely, I think I agree with you that, while I'm saying that how to think might be more important, but that does not mean that what to think is not important at all. because you still have to do your basic calculation, right? For all mothers, to be able to shop in the market so that you're not bullied by the sellers in the market, that you must be able to function as a basic sort of knowledge. But beyond that, if you are aspire to deepen your education, then we have to move slightly upward into deeper learning, into thinking of how to think and how to sort of instill this skill set into the young generation. Now, the problem is that I am fully acknowledging your concern that this might not be able to be done perfectly under current circumstances where classes are run virtually. So this is where then creativity and in the delivery is required, right? So take, for example, I think I heard from some of my friends, in the future classes, it's not just done like, in a sort of synchronous methods, right? Let's say, for example, to do some kind of basic chemicals, the teachers ask them to cook so that, the primary school students know how to differentiate between what is happening when you are putting sugar and water together, or salt, and the difference between the different molecules type. So again, the modality and the approach can be different, even though there's a constraint of, the current situation that it cannot be done in the classroom. Does it make sense? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much as well, Dr. Annie. I would like to pose the question to our other panelists as well.
Yes, please.
Would you like to give a short comment on that?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Annie, and thank you to TT for posing that question. I guess I'll just keep it short. So everyone here knows about rules, and I think everyone maybe came across that rules are meant to be broken. Spoiler alert, it's not. Rules are to be followed, but to be bent. A good analogy is everyone, for those who sportsmen, then they may be playing football, for example. There are rules in football that you have to follow. You're not supposed to break any rules. That's why you get the card. So, but that doesn't mean you cannot be creative. So, for example, nowadays we're focusing on STEAM, correct me if I'm wrong, science, technology, engineering, the arts, and maths. It's important to know these information, knowledge, and whatnot, just to understand the whole concept. What's happening now is, for example, like Facebook, it's a platform to communicate. Look at it as like telephone, but that doesn't mean you cannot innovate. For example, like AI is coming, virtual reality is coming. So, for example, another example I can give you is maybe PhD or master students back then, when they do their studies, they use textbook, correct, Dr. Annie? But you never know, our children in the future, when they study, they might be using virtual books that's not even there anymore. I mean, look at another example is if everyone goes to Microsoft Word, if you click the save button, many students now don't even know what that icon stands for. It's a diskette. Not many people have touched a diskette for the last 5 years, but it's still there. It's still there. So again, it's all about innovation. It's not about changing, but please go back to basic. Please follow the rules, but be creative, be innovative. So that's my answer to that on any aspect of education.
Thank you so much, YBS Wendy, for your answer. Last but not least, Ms. Dina, would you like to give a very short comment for that question?
I echo what Dr. Annie and YBS Wendy is talking about. I think the foundation of education is still important, especially because we need some sort of literacy and numeracy skills to complement our competencies and other character qualities. Otherwise, again, like it needs, we definitely need it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Dina, for your answer. And thank you to all the panelists once again for that, for your answers too. And thank you so much to Titi for that great question. We'll now move on to our third question. Can we have Ho Hu Yen Min from Vietnam to ask their question, please?
Hi, my name is Min, and I would like to ask Ms. Dina, As you mentioned about the emotional intelligence, so as far as concerned, these intelligence is kind of really important in understanding or managing our emotions. But in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, it's just decrease the in-person interactions, and that could lead to psychology or mental distress. My question is that what is your assessment of your students' emotional intelligence in COVID-19 pandemic? And may I ask some of your initiatives to enhance the student emotional intelligence? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Min. I really love it. I think to preface the answer is that definitely I don't have all the solutions, but I'm trying my best to become more aware of my students' emotional and mental well-being by just simply asking them how they are before the lesson. So I would ask them, how are you guys? And try to ask if there are any problems and reaching out to them and just being present for them. Because I feel like, yes, it is true that I don't see them and I do sort of miss that interaction with them in real life. But I do understand that we have to consider the overall picture and say that I am trying to adapt to the virtual online learning and try to find more creative ways to reach out to them. And one thing that I'd also like to emphasize is the role of the parents as well, and role of family members to ensure that their family members are emotionally healthy and mentally healthy. Because if the teachers are unable to see them face to face, and now they spend a majority of their time at home, it really sort of, I don't want to say like shift the responsibility, but it is kind of shifting the responsibility to the family members to ensure that everyone in their family is equipped with the necessary coping mechanisms so that they can still continue and be motivated to do online learning and to do the work that the teachers and the education system requires them to. And unfortunately, I feel like I'm still sort of trying to learn these strategies, but I think at the basic level, I just ask my students, I would text them one-on-one and say like, how are you doing? Especially those whom I know have had difficult mental health problems as well. So I definitely try to reach out to them one-on-one. But to summarize all of that is that we need to collectively come together to ensure the mental and the mental well-being of all our children and the youths. And it's not just simply the responsibility of the teachers, but also their friends, their family members.
Yeah, that's really informative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dina, and thank you so much, Min, for your answer and question, respectively. We'll take a question from the queue of hands and then one from the chat after this. So first of all, can we have Mr. Wafi Osman from Brunei to ask their question, please?
All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon to all the panelists and also the moderator. Can everyone hear my voice?
Walaikum salam. Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Thank you. So I have a simple question. I share the opinion that essential skills such as leadership, entrepreneurship, or even financial literacy is very important, especially for in the reality outside of school. So I believe that it should be taught even as early as primary school or probably secondary school. So my question is, in what way or approach can we achieve implementing this into the education system? Or maybe it can become probably a core subject or probably a module at schools and university, or maybe something that we as youth can do right now to achieve this. So yeah, please do share your insight regarding this matter.
Thank you so much for that question. Perhaps we can redirect it to each panelist, and perhaps each panelist can just briefly summarize their answer in a tweet-like phrase. So YB Swandi, would you like to give your tweet-like phrase first as the answer to that question?
All right, 160 characters. All right, thank you, Wafi, for the question. I remember when I was teaching English and science back in primary school, about 10 years ago, give and take. So there is a textbook that we have to follow. It teaches you about state of matter, liquid, gas, and solid. But if you're just following the textbook, it'll just be, again, it's very basic, it's very straightforward. So instead of just following the textbook, this is where teachers, education system need to go beyond the textbook. I think nowadays teachers are taught to teach go beyond the textbook. So going back to the experience, I remember I was teaching spelling for English. So rather than asking them, okay, ladies and boys and girls, spell blue, everyone spell B-L-U-E. Instead of spelling blue, why don't you make it as a game that they can relate to real life? So rather than for them spelling blue, what I asked them to do is, I remember it was a treasure hunt to look for something blue out around the school. So this is where you need to interact with your environment, interact with the community. I guess that how to do this is, instead of making financial literacy as a subject and make it like exam based only, why not you integrate it with your education? So example, Chigudina is teaching sociology, put it concepts of financial literacy in sociology. I guess that's more valuable rather than just making an exam based or classroom based education. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, YB Swandi, for the answer. Dr. Annie, would you like to contribute to that question?
Quick example, and based on my past experience many moons ago, when I was in primary school, in Indonesia, there used to be like, this arts and crafts. So the teachers made us created something, and then there was a bazaar to kind of sell it, and then, inviting parents. So this is when, some of my friends actually continued to sell. So to me, it's a success, right? I mean, that is really a real example of entrepreneurship from young. So yeah, I'm echoing YBS one is take that, sometimes book and textbooks are important, but more importantly is how do you innovate the way and the how to. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Annie. And last but not least, Ms. Dina.
Yeah, I also echo my fellow panelists, because I believe that all these skills we should place like real life value to them. So when we talk about financial literacy, we don't look at it from just the academic point of view, but how these skills can actually enrich and improve the quality of life of a person. So that way the person is more accountable, and they feel a sense of ownership in wanting to learn all these skills. And when we take out the sort of academic exams and assessments of a subject, it really sort of inspires the students to be more curious about it. So naturally, again, it goes back to honing and cultivating emotional and social skills with children, to be more curious and to continue to learn and apply what they know to the real world. So we don't have to force all of these skills, because they naturally will just want to understand them and get them and acquire them. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dina. Hopefully that answers your question, Mr. Wafi Osman.
Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we have time for just one last question from the chat. So this person from Cambodia is asking, so the youth play an important role in helping the society during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that includes injecting people with a vaccine, etc. So what is the role of the government to support the youth and make sure that it is successful? I would like to redirect this question to YB Swandi, actually. Would you like to give a comment on that in 160 characters?
All right. So young people plays a role in the COVID-19 situation, and everyone acknowledges that. I guess the role of the government here, again, the role of the government in any situation are two. One, to provide the physical space Two is to provide the legislation or the policy that supports it. As simple as that, So if we cannot provide the safe space, be it physical space, be it mental space, and make sure it's safe, then the government is not doing their job well. And secondly, you need to provide the policy that supports it. So a good example that I can give here is, like, in many universities, you have this community hours, community helping, community volunteering hours. So that's part of the university's policy. So it doesn't go against their education. They still need to do the academic adventures, be it like 3 to 4 years of doing their degree, but they need to contribute, but how many hours to go back to the society. So that can be a supporting or an empowering policy that can be done. So, if you expand it from just university to like a national level, perhaps a good example in Brunei, we have this Sukarelawan Belia or youth volunteers, where the government even provide allowances to these youth to volunteer. So that's an example that I can give them.
Thank you so much, YB Swandi, for that answer. And thank you so much for the question as well. Unfortunately, time is not our best friend today, so we sincerely apologize that we can't get through all the questions, but the questions were great so far. If your questions are really burning, perhaps you can talk to the AUSCU Secretariat, and you could perhaps work something out. So ladies and gentlemen, with that, our plenary session is slowly coming to an end. I hope that you have been able to retain that how question as a focus throughout the session, and that your eyes have been opened into creating that paradigm shift of new education strategies and approaches amidst and post-pandemic. On behalf of everyone here, I would like to thank our wonderful speakers for your time and sharing your invaluable knowledge to us all. I am positive that your contribution is the start of a domino effect towards creating a better world for tomorrow, for ASEAN and beyond. Thank you as well to our audience members for being so engaging, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the conference. And lastly, thank you to the ASEAN Student Council, University Student Council Union, for allowing me to be part of this powerful conference as one of the moderators. Now, I'd like to end off this session with a Spanish quote that I adore a lot. It sounds, solo una cosa separa sueño y realidad, y eso es acción. And that translates to, only one thing separates dream and reality, and that is action. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nukman, and it has been my pleasure to be your moderator for today. Until next time, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and goodbye.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Mr. Nukman, and all the panelists for an important overview on the educational matters for the ASEAN region and the aspirations for future generation. What an insightful discussion we had just now. Dear delegates, you will be in breakout rooms after our break session as per name list in the info pack given by the committee. Please enjoy your break, but do not leave the Zoom conference and get ready for the group discussion and presentation. We will meet at 3:15 p.m. So please enjoy your break. Thank you.
To the progress toward. Say to them, say to the down keepers, the sun slappers, the self-soilers, the harmony ushers, even if you are not ready for the day, it cannot always be night. Sir, flex I do work, six I'm like Mike, he's out of sight, whoa, you got me pipe, you man like Ike, six out the spot, into the night.
Yeah, I'm shaking the drop, I'm still up on top, I been had the bop, the devil my op, can't pay me to stop, my God at the top. We gon' praise our way out the grave, dog. Living, speaking, praise God. Walking out the graveyard, back to life. I serve, follow your word, see with new sight.
Into the night.
Yeah, this life I'm living, all the advice been tipped in. Gave me that grip, no slipping. Out of my mind, we tripping. Tell me take with new sight
into the night.
Still on side, still outside.